Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our live session today. I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier Online, and today we're going to be exploring some autumn flavors. We've got pumpkin, we've got apple, we've got maple, and we've got bourbon. Super nice combination with a little bit of cinnamon in there as well. We're going to be doing an apple pumpkin cake with a maple bourbon glaze on it, and I think that you guys are really going to like this a lot. And this technique and this idea that I'm going to be showing you can apply in so many different ways, and we'll kind of talk about that along the way. But first of all, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making our batter. I have this basic batter that I make for pumpkin cake. I use it for banana as well and zucchini, and it's a little bit on the heavier side. But the cake that you use can be something of your choice too. We're going to be making a batter, and then we're going to be pouring it in a pan that we've prepared with some sliced apples. So like I said, I think you guys are really going to like this technique. So let's go ahead and make the batter, then we'll prepare the pan and we'll talk about apples a little bit. Okay? All right, so this is for my batter. I just have some pumpkin puree, some sugar, and I have some cinnamon in here as well. I go heavy on the cinnamon. You could use other spices too. You could do a combination. Pumpkin pie spice is always nice with any of these autumn cakes. Okay, so like I said, I like to use heavy on the cinnamon. You can see that my pumpkin went from bright to a little bit more brownish color. That's because of all my cinnamon in here. Nextly, I'm going to be adding my vegetable oil. And then we're going to scrape down the bowl, add the eggs and some flour, and we will be done. Okay, so like I said, this very basic recipe that I use, I've been using it for a long time. All right, you have to be careful at this point with this oil in here, turning it up very little at a time so it doesn't splash. Okay, it takes a little bit for the oil to get incorporated. All right, let's go ahead and scrape this down. And you know, as we know in our mixing, scraping down our bowl is super important to make sure all of the ingredients are well incorporated. All right, guys. And please let me know if you have any questions along the way. Okay, so once this comes together, I'm going to be adding my eggs. And then lastly, I have some all-purpose flour, and I sifted this with a little bit of baking soda. Okay, let's go ahead and add the eggs. And probably add them a little bit slower. They may mix in a little bit better for you. So like I said, super easy batter, guys, and you may have a go-to batter that you use for your cakes all the time, and that would be perfect for this. Okay, I'm going to be adding my flour, and like I said, I have my baking soda sifted into my flour here. Okay, when we add our flour, when we're making these tender things like cakes and cookies, we don't want to mix too much because the flour's got gluten in it, which is a plant protein. And if we mix it too much, it's going to become dry. But bread making is a whole different story. But think tender and delicate and don't over mix. I'll even kind of pull it off the mixer and finish mixing by hand sometimes as well. So I'm keeping it on low, just watching for it to incorporate. Okay, so it's becoming a smooth batter. So I think I've got it pretty well mixed, a little bit on the bottom. So I'm going to be scraping that down, and then I'll finish the mixing by hand. Okay, guys. Okay, so this is our batter. As you can see, a little bit of streaking. There's a little bit of pocket of that pumpkin and sugar in the bottom, but we're going to go ahead and just mix that in carefully, just folding from the bottom up to the top until I don't see any streaking, and then I know that it's mixed all the way. This is a little bit of a thicker batter, and you can use any cake batter that you like for a cake like this. Okay, so we've still got a little bit of streaking. There's that little kind of nub in the bottom of some of these KitchenAids that you kind of get stuff hiding down there. Okay, all right, so let's talk about the apple part of the cake now. Okay, let me wipe my hands a little bit. All right, let's set this batter aside. We'll come back to this. Okay, so for the apple portion of the cake, we're going to be lining the pan with some apples, all right? And for today, I chose the Honeycrisp apple. This is one of my favorites. This is what it's going to look like in the grocery store. It's a little bit green and a little bit red. This is how it typically looks. And the Honeycrisp apple is great for baking. It holds up very well in baking. That's not the case with all apples. So another apple that's great for baking is the Granny Smith apple, and that's the green one. You want to stay away from something like Red Delicious. It's great for eating, and it's good for making like apple butters, but it's not going to hold up too well in your baking. All right, so I've got my prepared pan, and I've sprayed this and I've lined it with foil because I'm going to be lining it with apples, and I don't want any sticking. I want to be sure that it comes out of the pan. Okay, so I've got some apples that I sauteed earlier with some butter and some maple syrup, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the pan with these apples. Okay, I'm just giving them a stir a little bit, and you're just going to want to be sure that they are cool. These are cool to the touch. They're at room temperature. You don't want to put any hot apples in here, so you're going to be pouring your batter on top. So what I usually do is I spoon them in. This is a 10-inch pan that I'm using, and this is about an apple and a half. I cut them in 1/4-inch slices, and I sauteed them a little bit to soften them. So they're going to bake nicer when they're a little bit soft from the beginning. You know, apples are pretty firm, and the baking time for the cake is about 25 minutes, and that's not really enough time to soften these apples really well. So we're softening them ahead of time, sauteing them, and it's going to give them some more flavor too. Okay, so I lined my pan with some aluminum foil to be sure that these apples come out. So there's no sticking. Once I lined it with foil, I sprayed the whole pan. They still have a little bit of butter on the apple, and that's going to really help with the sticking. But we also have some maple syrup, which is going to be sugary, and we know that sugary is usually sticky. Okay, so just kind of arrange them around. You can put more or you can put less, whatever you like. I just like to cover the bottom of the pan. Okay. I mean, they smell and look delicious already. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to take our batter, and the batter that I have is enough for about 2 cakes. So what I like to do is I like to put about 1 inch worth of batter in a pan like this. You can make it higher if you like, or you could make it lower if you like too. So it's really kind of up to you what direction you want to go in. All right, so I've got enough batter for a second batch, which is great. And let me kind of put this over here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spread it around with my offset spatula. This is a thicker batter, but like I said, you can use any batter that you like. If you have, you know, banana and pumpkin or chocolate, or if you have an almond cake that you like, you can explore different cake batters on top of this apple arrangement that I'm showing you today. Okay, that's the beauty of this. You can have a lot of fun with it. But be sure not to skip that step with the aluminum foil on the bottom because that's going to ensure that there is no sticking. Okay, oftentimes when we're making cakes, we'll put a little piece of parchment, but parchment in apples and caramelization, you could get some sticking as well. That's why I do the sprayed foil. It works out just fine. So I have about an inch of my batter. I'm going to bake this at 350 for about 25 minutes. It doesn't take too long because I don't have a real high cake here. Okay, so let's go ahead. I have a cake that I made earlier. I want to show you guys the cake real quick. Okay, so this is the cake that I made earlier. What you want to do with this cake when it's still warm but not hot, but not cool, what you're going to do is you're going to go around the edges with your spatula and you're going to invert it onto a cake circle or one of these boards because we're really serving it upside down. So it's kind of almost like a pineapple upside down cake in a way. Okay, so I have a little bit of gapping here in the center because I had a little bit of a kind of a little bit of a higher part of the center of my cake. We oftentimes see that doming a little bit. You can trim it off if you like. I usually leave it on because I kind of like the breaking because I put some of my maple glaze in there. Okay, so nextly I'm going to show you how to make the maple glaze, guys, and I think that you're really going to like this part of the cake. All right, so on the stovetop I have the pan where I have the liquid, the maple syrup and the butter that I sauteed the apples in. I'm going to use the same pan. All right, so I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to add a little bit extra maple syrup, and you can add a little bit more butter too, but I like to add a little bit more maple syrup. I think I have enough butter in there. All right, so I'm going to bring this to a simmer. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm caramelizing these sugars a little bit. Okay, guys, be careful. This is where it gets really hot. You know, bringing sugar to high temperatures, you have to be very careful. So I have this on pretty high and I'm going to bring it to a simmer, and you're going to see this change a little bit as it simmers here. You're going to see it become a little bit more deeper amber in color. The color is changing already. You're going to feel it get a little bit thick. You're going to feel some resistance on your spoon. Okay, I'm going to lower this a little bit. Keep stirring, guys, so but be very careful. All right, you don't want to have any scorching on the bottom. So I feel a little bit of catch on the bottom. So we're caramelizing the sugars and the maple syrup to make our glaze, and it smells absolutely delicious. It smells divine. We've got a lot of bubbling here. We can see a lot of change in the color. Okay, so I think I've got it thick enough. You don't want to go too far. You don't want it to be too thick. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this off. Okay. This is induction burner. It works so fast, guys. Yours may not work as fast. Okay, so we have a nice glaze. You can see it changed in color a little bit. I can feel some resistance. It's gotten a little bit thick. You can take it a little farther, make it a little bit darker. Once the flame is off, go ahead and add your bourbon. You're going to see a little bit of simmer. You're going to see a little bit of steaming. You may want to stand back a little bit, but make sure that your flame is off before you add the bourbon. It is alcohol and it will flame up on you. So I always stand that back a little bit when I'm adding bourbon, even when my flame is off. But turn your flame off before you add the bourbon. Okay, guys? So I'm stirring this and it's steaming out a little bit. We're still going to have some flavor from the bourbon. You can absolutely make this without the bourbon. If you wanted to change it up a little bit, you could even add a little bit of orange juice at the end too. It'll make it a little bit more opaque, but that's absolutely an option. Okay, it's quite hot, and when it's hot, it's in its thinnest stage. So you want to let it cool off a little bit, and then you'll glaze your cake. You can either spoon it on, or you can brush it on. And I have some glaze that I made earlier. Okay, So this one has gotten a little thick, and if you wanted it to be a little bit thinner, you could always add a little bit of maple syrup. Okay, I simmered it a little bit longer. It's a little bit more amber in color, but we can go ahead and spread this on our cake. Like I said, we can brush it too. So it's a super nice finish to a cake like this, guys. And you can kind of see it's coming to life a little bit. And this glaze, super delicious flavor. Okay, almost like a caramel going on top, and I think you guys are gonna love it. And like I've been telling you, you can use this technique that I'm showing you with your favorite cake and it'll work out just fine. Okay, all right, this is cool, and the cake is just barely warm. If your cake is too hot and your glaze is too hot, it may run off a little bit on you. All right, so I have just enough where it's really, you can see it's absorbing into the cake. It's making a nice glaze, and I kind of like to fill that center with a little bit, but you can trim off the top of your cake so it doesn't have a dome and it won't open up like that. Okay, so the glaze is delicious. You have the foundation from sauteing the apples in the butter, and then you're adding a little bit more maple syrup, topping it off with the bourbon if you like. Okay, guys, so thanks for joining me today. We'll cut this and we'll post a picture for you guys, and I hope you have a great week. Goodbye.